Cowboy QB Maealiuaki Smith has already proven to be a dude that can do it. Zane Flores is still a Mr. Nebraska level certified beast, and I still firmly believe in Team G13. But a big boss Hauss has come home. Welcome back to Rockin' the Orange and Black again, Mr. Hejny.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're partially brought to you by Game Time Tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Make sure that you download Game Time today, because getting tickets for 2025 Cowboy football might have just received a little bit of a boost. It might be more enticing now to come check out the Cowboys. Of course, I think this means a spring game is must-see TV, but we'll wait on some of that. What we do not have to wait on now is the quarterback that is coming alongside this new staff with Doug Meacham and company, with Hauss Hejny now becoming a Cowboy. The former four-star, 92 overall, was a massive get coming out of high school. He was on a lot of our bucket list. If not your number one, he was definitely on your top 3 to get list. The reason this has been written in the stars for some time now is because he originally committed to Duke and Kevin Johns out of high school. He's had interviews where he talked about how Kevin Johns gave him advice and believed in him before anybody else did. But TCU did, in fact, come calling a little while later, and he has family that went to TCU. He's a legacy. So if it weren't for his dream school kind of popping up and giving him an offer, he was going to be a Duke Blue Devil. Now, what would have that looked like with him and Riley Leonard battling out? Who knows? But now we get to see what it looks like for him to battle it out with Garret Rangel, Zane Flores, and Maealiuaki Smith in Stillwater, America. As we all know, Garrett Wilson has decided to take his talents elsewhere. He has a new landing spot. I think it's going to be pretty fun to watch him. Speaking of being fun to watch, that is what Hauss Hejny is. Now, he is not 6'3", 6'4", like the rest of the quarterbacks, but that doesn't really matter when you're an off-platform athlete that brings a 700-meter dash to the football field. That means this previous season, Hauss Hejny would have been one of the top 3 or 4 fastest players on our entire roster. Him running with cornerbacks and wide receivers and running backs, it happens all day, every day, and he barely breaks a sweat in doing so. This is a certified track star who accounted for over 8,200 yards in high school, won a state title at Aledo High, where the colors were orange and black. He threw for over 5,000 yards, rushed for almost 2,500 yards, and his sophomore year, he was the primary wide receiver, averaging almost 59 yards a game, an additional 650 yards on top of that. So he is the quintessential dual-threat quarterback that has the ability to stretch the field and change the game from a dynamic perspective and numerically giving advantage to the offensive side of the ball. Now, we all know from a visual perspective what Spencer Sanders was able to provide. Hauss Hejny should be able to provide much of the same things, which is why he was instrumental in some of the TCU packaging this season for Doug Meacham, which is yet another reason why this made sense. As long as the financial side was somewhat close. Now, I know we weren't the biggest offer that he had from a compensation area, but the familiarity he had with Kevin Johns and Doug Meacham and what he's going to be able to bring to Oklahoma State obviously made this thing make a whole lot of sense. This is a certified burner that you have to pay attention to. We all loved the gamership of J.W. Walsh, and I think a lot of us appreciate the fact that Garret Rangel brings some of that. But Hauss Hejny is more athletic and faster than J.W. Walsh ever was. So this is kind of like a new age version of J.W., which is why I think it would be kind of cool to see him rock number 4 in Stillwater, America. He wore number 8 in high school when he was winning state titles and putting up crazy stats as a wide receiver, a rusher, and a quarterback. And now he takes all of that talent to Stillwater. Now, as this pertains to how the quarterback battle is going to shake out, I think that's going to be slightly contingent upon what offensive system we're going to cater towards, because maybe a more pro-style system that we've had the last couple years is going to help Rangel and Maealiuaki Smith. But if we go to more of the zone read style of system that we had under Spencer Sanders, then obviously that might favor more of a Zane or a Hauss Hejny. This is a very big deal because defensively, I don't think anybody's had any questions on the guys that Todd Grantham's brought in. Most of them have those SEC, Mississippi State, Florida ties. And the ones that just decided to go elsewhere, they still have that recruiting tie with Todd Grantham and Cap Dede and the rest of the defensive staff that we've brought in. Offensively, clearly there's an emphasis on the offensive linemen. And now we've got another big dude up front on the defensive line that we're about to get to. But this sets us up for an embarrassment of riches at the quarterback position. As I said, coming into this season, quarterback was not an issue. And I think we saw that out of Garret and Maealiuaki Smith when they did get into the ball game. Unfortunately, we still haven't seen Zane Flores quite get his opportunities yet. Some of it's just been because of development and understanding the option route concepts. Some of it's been injury, right? If he wasn't injury prone this previous season, we likely would have seen him. But we've seen enough out of Garret Rangel to get us at least optimistic. I think we've dang sure seen the same thing out of Maealiuaki Smith to get equally as excited about this upcoming season. The possibilities for Zane have been endless from the get-go. And now enter Hauss Hejny, who, even though Josh Hoover had a pretty phenomenal season at TCU this year, Hauss Hejny was still good enough, athletic enough, fast enough, and elusive enough to get on the field as a true freshman. They used up every opportunity they could to get Hauss Hejny on the field without it becoming some sort of limiting factor to his potential future eligibility. What this means in the spring, I think a lot of us are excited to find out. But no matter what, we know we have a couple different guys that athletically provide something that is a J.W. Walsh, Clint Shelf style of program. And then we also have some guys that can just straight sling it that also bring some athleticism. There's no way that anybody can be downtrodden about the quarterback position in Stillwater, America right now. Even if you weren't necessarily anticipating this being a move that Oklahoma State was going to make. Matter of fact, I did see a decent amount on social media that Hauss Hejny wasn't going to come here, which I didn't understand. Realistically, I understood that West Virginia and some other players were major factors in this whole deal. But the connections he had to Kevin Johns going back to Duke and Doug Meacham at TCU, to me, it just made too much sense. And as long as the financial compensation side of it was at least adequate, I knew that he was going to favor Oklahoma State. And now it seems as though he's going to be one of the dudes that we're bringing in for a completely clean slate. This is going to be almost an entirely new roster because you got to think of it. Even most of the guys that did, in fact, stay, they were contributors for sure. But it's not like we have an overabundance of starters that were returning. That is a thing of the past. So the young guys that were likely more suited to be implemented in the defensive system we were running, they now have the opportunity, again, with a clean slate, all new coaches, not to mention the fact that we have multiple coaches at multiple spots. Now we have multiple O-line coaches. We have coaches that coach different positions. We have multiple linebackers coaches. We have a nickelback coach. We have cornerbacks coach, DBs coaches. This individual technical advancement that we should see very quickly is now getting its own layers offensively as well. You had to rebuild the trenches, I think, on both sides of the ball, of course. I think we have more than enough playmakers on the outside. We have more than enough in the backfield. And if you were excited about the quarterback room coming into today, now you should be over the moon, elated, because Hauss Hejny does athletically bring something that we haven't had. Of course, we've had guys like Garret Rangel come in, go through the body by glass system and get themselves down to a 4.5 kind of 40. But even that's not 10,700 meter speed. Hauss Hejny was running 10.8 threes as a sophomore in high school, which is probably why he was the team's leading wide receiver. And Alito is almost the definition of a powerhouse, especially in that area. So he has a pedigree of successful winning seasons. He's bringing that to Stillwater after being a major participant in TCU's success this year. The 9-win season is nothing to scoff at. And with the weapons that we already had around him, if we continue to kind of upgrade the offensive line, which I feel pretty comfortable where we are now with some of the guys that we've brought in, this spring could be a completely different beast for Cowboy football. And it could be so enticing that it inspires us all to get tickets, season tickets, to see what this rebuild's going to look like. The guys are excited, and stuff like this is getting us that way as well. That's right. Get your tickets with the bee's knees in the ticketing industry, which is Game Time Tickets, ladies and gentlemen. You already know they have some of the best features in the game, one of them being the game time picks. It takes out all the fluffy stuff for you to get the most incredible deals without having to sit through thousands of minutes of unnecessary tickets. With a game time, you're also going to be able to get the all-in pricing, which means you're going to know the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. The game time ticket coverage is purchased with the best, most flexible customer service policy in the industry. And the game time lowest price guarantee will credit you back 110% of the difference. You need to make sure that you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON. College, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Make sure you create that account and redeem that code. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today because you already know what time it is, ladies and gentlemen. It is game time. From game time to Hauss time to the big dudes down low time, we mentioned how Todd Grantham just continues to impressively bring guys into the fold. Now, this latest gentleman coming by way of Virginia, 6'4", 290-pound Michael Diatta, much like Demerrick Morris coming over from Temple, isn't necessarily going to pop off the page athletically from a highlights perspective, nor statistically. He's got 55 tackles in his career in Virginia, 2.5 sacks, couple forced fumbles, tackles for loss, but really didn't kind of catch his high streak until this previous season, where he was able to contribute 31 tackles of his 55 just in this last year. He was much more productive and much more of a disruptor in the interior of the defense. This is much like Demerrick Morris coming over from Temple. Their job isn't to fill up the stat sheet. Their job isn't to make things extremely fun, pretty, and sexy. Their job is to make things ugly, muddy, dirty, nasty down low to give other guys opportunities. Now, you still have to have the capability to not only eat up double teams, but technically get off of blocks to create enough havoc to not only ruin the original plan for the play or what the hole or the gap it was supposed to go through, but you have to get in on the action as well. The advancement he's seen over the last few years, combined with this previous season of him kind of hitting his peak, should equal a lot of capabilities and opportunities for him in Stillwater to work side somebody like Justin Kirkland. And now you also have to take on Kyron Duhan. I think he's going to be a very big deal. You got Malik Charles coming over that should be able to provide a significant amount. You have Chindavian Bradley that's able to kind of do a multiple role system. And Michael Diatta is going to factor into the aggressive level with the now NFL style of coaching, with the SEC pedigree behind it, to potentially get the most out of Michael Diatta. So the progression he's had probably is going to equal him unlocking a new level in Stillwater. Now, if you go back and look at his high school film, I implore you to do so because it's fun. It is the epitome of a man amongst boys. A lot of the highlights that I found most interesting were from him playing left tackle. And that was part of his recruiting in high school was he going to play defensive line? Was he going to play offensive tackle? And he had several offers from dudes coming out of high school as well before he landed on Virginia. But Vanderbilt seemed like a likely destination. He did choose Oklahoma State over UCLA and Vanderbilt once again this go round, because I think people do see that he hasn't quite hit his ceiling yet. And with the new pedigree that we're bringing into Stillwater and his athleticism, guys, he was running down safeties in high school from left tackle. He would legitimately get out to the numbers and he would beat the running back there. Or he would get out on screens and beat the wide receiver before the receiver ever even broke. So he had a level of athleticism playing left tackle that probably made it somewhat of a seamless transition if he would have went that route. Obviously, Virginia went the defensive side of the ball where he is happy and just now kind of getting to his ceiling. So this adds another layer for Justin Kirkland and the new guys that are coming in that should make this whole process extremely enticing and exciting. In order for us, in my opinion, to build more excitement, it's got to be centered around a big event. Could that big event possibly be a spring game? It almost feels like it needs to happen, right? The last couple years, there's been the conversation of building up both sides of Boone Pickens Stadium, is why it didn't really work out. But we all know that Mike Gundy has a hand in this. We'll save some of that. As this pertains to the defense, if you look at the guys that we've been able to bring in on top of the young guys that we have still available, like your Gunnar Wilsons and your Jonathan Agumadus and your David Kabongos, your Landon Clevelands, your Tamarick Johnsons, when you factor all of those guys in with even a Gunnar Wilson, or if you want to go outside, I think we got to see a little bit of Emil Talib and Jacoby Oliphant. That young group, I think, was the core nucleus that we needed to have. Now you bring in a lot of these guys who have veteran experience, especially at all different levels, whether it be the SEC or the ACC or the Big Ten. You're bringing a lot of that now to Stillwater. So the developmental side of the game should not take all that long. They should be able to roll right into this Rob Glass system and hit all of their offseason goals while also getting acclimated to Oklahoma State, the class schedule, and the campus in and of itself. Before the season gets going, I think the excitement level is equal to, if not more than this previous season. I know that sounds slightly outlandish. When you bring back 21 returning starters and almost 90% of your roster off of a 10-win season, it's hard to get more excited than that. But with the way that went, this new age, clean slate, brand new team, brand new staff, it just has that feeling of building more and more excitement. And to me, you have to be able to quantify that from a fan perspective. So it almost seems like a logical business move for Mike Gundy and company to do something that we have, been avoiding the last couple of years for whatever reason. We know Mike Gundy doesn't love them, but come on, man. You've got to build some stuff to get everybody pumped. If nothing else, build the potential NIL capabilities for these dudes. Our dude, Mike Gundy. While we're talking about getting the financial side of life a little bit better, you might as well get squared away today with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We all know the NFL playoffs are just right around the corner here, but it's still not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet is a winner. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up the W. Even if you've got a couple Cowboys in some injury kind of protocols right now, you still have Jaylen Warren that can help you pick up the next big W. You still have the capability for Tyreek Hill to bust a big one at any point in time. And, of course, we'll never, ever be out on the Tylan Wallace action with the Ravens as they look to potentially make a Super Bowl run. You don't need to miss out on the action either because it's never been more thrilling than right before playoff season. Get it together today with FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com to join today. Again, that is FanDuel.com. Go there for your chance to win $250 back in bonus bets if your first $5 hauler is a winner. Make every single moment matter more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so we've been picking, poking, prodding, basically alluding to the fact that whomever needs to push the action here. There hasn't been an announcement, to my knowledge, on whether we're going to have a spring or not, a spring football finale. I don't necessarily mind the premise behind the last couple of years, doing the meet and greet, getting a fans kind of look in on what the practices kind of look like, and then getting autographs from the players and things of that nature. I don't mind it, but at the same time, it does not build anything. That's what a spring game does. More than anything, it gets you excited about the guys that you haven't really got to see a lot of on Saturdays. The guys that you know have the capability to potentially be a big name and to be a primary contributor for the ball club. Spring is usually the time where you get to see that. You get to see guys like CJ Tate kind of pop off and do some crazy things. Langston Anderson was another one that was able to catapult himself via some of the things he did in spring. The battles with Garret Rangel and Gundy in the spring were worth their weight in gold, but we didn't get to see a lot of that. From a fan perspective, I know Mike Gundy likes to keep things behind closed doors, and he doesn't really mind the fact that we're not having spring games because it is a lot to go through. It's a lot to sort through, and it does unnecessarily kind of make you come up with a quote-unquote depth chart, maybe before guys have kind of earned their spots. But from a nostalgic point of view, we need to bring this back. And if we're going to have the capability to reinvest in NIL like we did last season, you've got to give some of that sales pitch. I also think that that's going to be part of Mike Gundy's, bigger CEO style of role. More, shaking hands, kissing babies, taking the helicopter out to do more recruiting, to do more interviews, to get on more Pat McAfee's and ESPN's and kind of promote Oklahoma State on more of a national level. I think with that should also come with the responsibility of building the NIL back up to at least what it was this previous season. I think we all know, and we're seeing that we had to be more competitive in NIL. We had to be more outgoing when it came to getting transfers from other premier universities to come to Stillwater America. But with that, I think you could build it even more with the performances in spring. Now, outside of just not letting the cat out of the bag, can somebody else smarter than me explain to me what logical move it is to not have a spring game? The excuse of, well, we're building that side of the stadium or we're building that side of the stadium, it didn't fool nobody. It never did fool anybody. Because if you really wanted to have a spring game that was going to benefit the fans and going to let everybody kind of get eyes on what the future could look like, you could have done it at numerous places. I mean, you could have had the team walk down to Stillwater High School. It's not difficult, all right? So let's not pretend that building this side is a limiting factor. It all comes down to the comfortability of Mike Gundy allowing everybody to get eyes on stuff and to know what the position battles are looking like and to know what the initial spring depth chart is going to be. Of course, a lot of that changes in fall, but it does so much for not only building positivity for the fan base and potentially putting more money in the players' NIL pockets, but it also lets people understand from a national perspective that Oklahoma State has some things to look out for. And additionally, because there are going to be a handful of guys that don't end up making the 105 roster limitation, you have a spring game, it could give some of those dudes the opportunity to showcase themselves. If they're not going to end up on the roster, but let's say they had, 5 rushes for 78 yards and a touchdown in the spring game, now maybe they can catapult that into something that they didn't have pre-spring. It does so much for building anticipation. I know words are hard for me. It does so much for confidence within the locker room and also with the fan base. We can get eyes on some of that athleticism and talent that we could potentially have brewing compared to other seasons. And then additionally, it gives those guys more of a capability to be graded with meaningful snaps and meaningful moments. And if you have stats to back it up, whether you're going to stay at Oklahoma State or if you're going to be one of those handful that don't have room on the 105 limit, now you have something to take somewhere else that could benefit you. This is why I think the spring game is a absolute must. Mike Gundy kind of reserving everybody and holding back on everything. To me, this season, it does not work. So the coaches that have been brought in, the pressure put on Mike Gundy by the Board of Regents, the pressure put on Dr. Schrum, Chad Weiber, all of that pressure needs to culminate, at least now, with a spring game. I'm not saying that just selfishly as a fan. I'm saying that that's beneficial for rebuilding and regalvanization of everybody in the NIL and the national media to kind of help prop up 2025. Now, from a betting perspective, don't get it twisted. I kind of hope we're projected as 16th place. All right. I'd like to make Arizona State money this coming season. But regardless of where we are, I think the depriving the fan base of a spring game is completely unnecessary. I know it's unnecessary, but the flip side of that needs to now be utilize the spring game to build people up, to make people more money, even if it's individually and even if it means they could potentially take their talents elsewhere. If we know we have to cut some dudes yet again, no matter what, give them that opportunity and give all of the fan base the ability to see some of the guys that we might not get to see a lot during the season. I mean, I think a lot of the world would have loved to see a little Io Shotomite King instead of him just being on the field to catch a few passes and block a few dudes. But that's what spring is for. So hopefully we get it. And hopefully we can all stir the pot enough for Chad Weiberg and Dr. Casey Strum to understand that this is a necessity, especially when you're in a rebuild. You have to kind of build the momentum. You have to stoke the flames, turn it into a fire that gets hot enough to brand everybody in the conference with a bunch of L's. All righty, y'all. So we're going to have for this one right here. Stay tuned. We have a crossover where we talk hoops with Parker Ainsworth from Locked On Cougs. So stay ready for that one. Until then, that's all we're going to have for this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here on Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. It's like a date, right? You can't get it if you don't ask. Hit the daggone like and subscribe right about now. My podcasting people out there, you're the bricks, the bread, the butter, the fountain, the fondue. You're all of it. You make this thing move. Appreciate you. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave a review. That is all. Later, my taters.